Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the B&H virtual event space. You are tuned in to Leica Stories, and today we are in conversation with photographer, filmmaker, and modern day Renaissance man, Greg Hatton. Greg, what's going on, man?
Hello, everybody. How you doing today, Derek?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
Doing good, man. Just kind of living life and exploring a new place right now. I'm in Luxembourg. So
How is it? Is it your first time there?
oddly enough, I think I was here when I was a baby, but I'm gonna just let that go. So yes, this is my first time.
This is the first time that counts.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
It's kind of like when people are like, well, I went to California once, but my mother was pregnant, and it's like, no, that doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
Now,
Yeah,
now it's like as an adult photographer, storyteller, filmmaker, I think it brings a little bit of a different view to everywhere you go again as an adult once you're in like a creative mindset. It's like you see the world differently from
absolutely. Absolutely. It's weird because you almost see it. I don't really want to say more maturely because you know we always talk about how we see the world through child's eyes, like everything's brand new and all that. I mean, I'm not a child anymore, but I still feel that way. Like you walk into a place and you're like, whoa, like look at these buildings, look at this topography, all that kind of stuff is really exciting. And it happens every time you go anywhere new, even if you're just like a city away that you've never been to before.
Isn't it so interesting? Like we were kind of talking about this in the green room and about how people are just interesting. Like new places, everything you're experiencing. And I think it's more pronounced when you go overseas, obviously. But even if you go from one state to the next, it's like drastic change, or it can be a drastic change, or sometimes you realize how similar you are to a place that's just thousands of miles away.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is special at the end of the day. Like when you look at somebody, we were just talking about, we spend so much time looking through the viewfinder that you really start to see people and see these places and see these little intricacies that are interesting to this person, to that person, similarities to people that you might. I was in Brazil and I was riding a bus and I looked out the window and I saw this lady that looked exactly like my grandmother. Like exactly, like so much so that I got off the bus and I just went to go take a look and I got close and I was like, dude, I didn't even take a picture. I was just like, wow, like just completely amazed at just like, the height, the hair, everything was like very similar to my grandmother's. And she's in Rancho Cucamonga, California, and I'm here in like Rio de Janeiro.
So that begs the conversation then. Does everybody have a twin out there?
They say that you have like seven, like everybody on the planet has seven people that look like each other. Like that's what they say. And we've been seeing stories of people getting on airplanes and they find a person that has their same name and they look the same. Yeah, I believe it, dude. I mean, the matrix is only so big, right?
All right. It is wild. I mean, I work with a guy that we call him stunt doubles, and he's from the Bronx. I live in the Bronx. And I was like, dude, there's like 10 of you in the Bronx alone. And that's only just what I've seen on my commute. So I believe it. I think we all have at least a couple iterations of ourselves out there. And that's just something it's interesting because, again, like we were talking about, it's the little nuances. It's what makes us so unique. And each person has their own little things. You could be almost exactly like somebody, but you're never going to be somebody else. You're always going to be yourself. Because I think that has to do also with, our decision making. It's like I could be a carbon copy of you, 99.9%, and we can make the same choice every single time. But I guess there's that unknown that you dive into. And that's what's so interesting about getting to know people, is that you're not just a product of who you are and who you've been, but who you will be, the decisions you make. Am I getting too off in the weeds here?
No, dude. I mean, it actually plays straight into photography too. Like, there's 1,000 photographers on a block now, right? Like everybody has a phone, everybody has all this, but they're not saying the same thing with their pictures. You know what I mean? Like there's these intricacies or there's these sensibilities that change up the images or the storytelling that exists in the images. And that's why, to me, I don't think that the world of photography can ever be oversaturated, because I'm not going to do the same pictures that you do, even if we have the same camera in the same place with the same light. You're going to choose something different. I'm going to choose something different. So, I mean, that's endlessly inspiring to just go out and do what you do, to be able to present it to somebody else and tell that story. I mean, I think to me, I mean, it's kind of like glass half full. Like, it's like, wow, there's so many opportunities. Like, let's just see where that goes. And that's exciting about life in general to me.
Totally. I mean, you said that before we went live. You're like, it's a beautiful thing to be alive. And I think that's that whole perspective of like, you can sit here and again, I feel like the more you're on your phone, the more you're on social media, negative always seems to garner more attention. It's more provocative to put something out there negative, or it's easy to focus sometimes on the negative, but a lot of times it's really tied down to our perspective about how our level of success and the experiences that we have with people. It's like if you walk up, if I walk up to you and I go, if I came into this interview thinking, all right, well, no, I'm going to take a negative spin on it. What are we going to get out of it? Where is it going to go? It's going
Right.
to quickly devolve. But you go into it and it's like, man, I was stoked to talk to you. I told Greg before we went live, everybody, I was like, I fought my urges as being an interviewer to dig into Greg and to try to get an idea of who he is. Cause I'm like, you know what? No, Greg was like, let's just do this thing with no forethought. Let's not talk about what we're going to talk about. Let's just do it. And I think that's the better way, is to learn who you are through your words, through your perspective and your views. So I kind of want to bring this back to photography in the sense of photography, film, storytelling. Where did you get your motivation, your inspiration, and what does it mean to you as a filmmaker, photographer, to be able to tell people stories?
I mean, right off the bat, like I think storytelling is the most important thing that happens in life. Everything that we do as people is based on stories that we heard, and that goes from the start to the beginning. The reason I'm dressed the way that I'm dressed, that I listen to the music that I listen to, the reason that I have the cameras that I have is because of stories that I heard. And just you being your person, you're telling me a story in that. It's not just a written, story on a book page or anything like that, or a movie. I mean, just us, who we are, we're telling the story to people that we pass by. And that's awesome. But when you look at, or for me personally, photography started when I was a kid and I saw the photo albums and I went up and down these pages and I just saw all of the, like I saw my parents younger, I saw my aunts and uncles younger in different places. And then there was a story attached to all of them. So I always associated images with the story that goes with it. It was never really like a snapshot, like, look at this, and then you go to the next. It was more like, I want to know, what place is that? What year was that? How old were you? Like, what were you doing? That kind of thing kept me going. And then when I found that, I was a kid, but when I understood that motion picture cameras are basically the same as stills cameras, just doing more pictures per second to create motion, blah, 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 I was sucked into movies because I'm like, oh, they're making stories. And so it was like a rabbit hole for me because I had this, this mind that just wants to, explore the possibilities of what life is and what it can be. So that never stopped. Every time I saw a picture, every time I heard a piece of music, every time I went somewhere, it was all about the story of my experience and how I share it with people. And also, the experiences and stories from other people's that I could take in to try to, have a little bit more fun with what I was doing. I mean, being alive. Because, otherwise, if you think about it, you just said it, perspective is everything.
Mhm.
If we don't see the world in a perspective that's, inspiring to us or exciting to us, what are we going to be doing? What are we going to be left with? You know what I mean? Like it is a joy to be alive, even in these wild times, but I think it's awesome to be able to share what we're doing to bring out the best of who we all are, really.
Totally. I mean, we all, especially now with photos and they've made filmmaking so easy now. We just finished doing a workshop on filmmaking with your phone. There's really no excuse anybody has for not being able to tell their own story. And I think you can get into the semantics of it, quality and gear
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And it's like we ultimately all have our choices. What is the best tools for us? But you can do it at bare minimum. When you wipe quality off the table, you can go and tell somebody's story. And it has more to do with like these things that you're talking about, who you are as a person. What is your perspective? You travel a lot, right? When you're going in and you're meeting people, I can't help but think that when you're going into these situations, it's like you're going in with a thirst and a hunger for knowledge. Like you want to know more about the people, about the culture. You kind of have alluded to the fact that it helps make you who you are. You're like this cumulative being based on who you are, your own personal history, and then everything that you've encountered in your life. So can you kind of talk about how your life and your travel experience has played into your work?
Yeah, I always loved traveling. My mom got me traveling when I was a kid, and I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I traveled to Europe for the first time when I was about 10. I went to Germany, and I was blown away. I mean, because before this, it was just like National Geographics and watching stuff on TV, and I'm like, oh man, these places look so crazy because I'm used to the city. I'm a city kid. But I wanted to know more, so we went out to Germany, and my mind exploded, bro. Like I swear I saw places that looked similar, but they were a little bit different. People were wearing similar clothes, but they were, just a little bit different. And the cars were different, the food was different, everything was a little bit different. And I really admired that. But I realized because we were in Europe and then we went to like Switzerland and we went to all these other places, that every other place had something different to offer. So I was like, oh man, I want to go everywhere. Like, because I had a map in my hand. I could read like this place is over here, this place is over here. I wanted to see everything because it was exciting. You know what I mean? Just to understand that there's different stories and all that. So I spent my life trying my hardest to travel as much as I could. I landed a job. And I started off my career actually in motorsports. So I was part of racing teams, and that guaranteed travel. So I spent a lot of time on the road in the US, and then that ended up being an international thing. But it was invigorating to me to know that I was going to go outside of my norm and see something a little bit different.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. And that resonates with me as well. I think I haven't traveled as much, but one of the things that makes travel so interesting to me and that makes me want to get out there and travel more is that those differences and meeting these people that come from different walks of life, and they have different cultural norms and they've experienced different things. And I think that when you tie that into the fabric of humanity, it makes us all better. It's,
It does.
there's something to be said for having knowledge of people that aren't like you, people that don't look like you, people that don't have the same customs as you do, or the same, even like just the regular daily things. People in Europe, they get way more vacation than we do. Why don't we get holiday? Like
You
just stuff like
started on
that.
that, dude.
I
That
know,
part
right?
is there. No, but it's crazy because there's a saying that travel is fatal to prejudice. Like real travel is fatal to prejudice, because once you get into it and you see, oh, I actually like this music. Oh, this food is good. Or like, you have I went to Morocco and had Moroccan mint tea,
Mhm.
and it's incredible. Like I was like, what in the world? Like I thought I was having tea before. Apparently I was not having anything. Like I had water in my glass, but all these different things, like your mind opens up to what life really is. And it's awesome to see. It's better to share that information, to share the stories that you have, to I mean, my medium is through video and film and pictures, because I feel like you're not supposed to keep that inside either. You're supposed to share with everybody that's around you. So I take pictures, I talk to people about that. And that's pretty much what it's going to be about for the rest of my life, I'm sure.
That's such a cool analogy with the tea. And I think that puts it in perspective where really a lot of stuff that we come across has come with either a caveat or a particular tilt to the view or an agenda or something, where it's like now we live in such an interesting age where we have all the information we could want available to us. We have the
Yeah.
tools to go tell our own stories. And I think that's the coolest thing for me about photo, and when you get into video and filmmaking, is you don't need anybody to tell you. You can go out and you can tell your own stories. You can create your own history. You
Yeah.
can put something out there into the ether or out online or wherever. And it's really up to you, the kind of legs that it has.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because like in 2020, when the world was crazy, I spent a lot of time just reading about photography and just like really getting into like Gordon Parks and Avedon, and you know all everybody that you can imagine. It's funny that I'm making a blank right now. Sebastião Salgado is like the GOAT, period. My own mentor, Frank Jackson, like just really looking at the stories that they were doing and the work that they were doing. And something clicked inside of me. Like, I don't know, I can't really put a finger on this because I've been shooting for years. But something in 2020, when I was going through these books and looking at this work and seeing that these guys were doing this work when they were our age right now. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I'm sorry. I'm like, that's wild. They're doing, like, I'm the age now that they were when they made this image.
Mm.
And some kind of responsibility into my own image making came up. It's like, I'm not just doing this just because I want to have a lot of likes on my Instagram. Like, what is this going to mean going forward? You know? And like you said, like that, there's a real thing that I actually, as photographers, we really know all about perspective, right? We can make an image look a certain way by where we put the camera.
Okay.
And we can tell a story based on the perspective or based on how we expose the image. So that puts a lot of responsibility on us to actually show what's really real, to actually say what's really real. And that can change a lot of lives. I mean, yes, you pop on the news, or you pop on whatever, and Instagram or something like that, and there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of like over sexualized stuff and all that. But I'm trying to find balance in the game and put some real work out there that's quality, that's beautiful, that's insightful, because we want that too. And that's up to us to do. And when we do it, bro, you feel it on the inside. You don't even have to say much about it. You just have to, you be that, and people will see that.
And I think that comes through in your work. I told you before we went live how impactful your photos were for me personally. And it's something where we all lose motivation at a certain point. We all have those periods where we're like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not even feeling my own work. I don't feel like I have the desire to go out and create work, or I feel like the work that I'm creating is not moving me, because we get past a certain point. I think this interesting that you brought up that whole dynamic of these greats that we look up to creating an insane amount of incredibly meaningful work at a young age. And it's like, man, did they go through those phases where it was just like, no, I'm doing trends and I'm doing work that's just for somebody else or for likes. I feel like a certain part of that is a byproduct of the age that we live in, where a lot of people weren't even exposed to pop-up trends and the like. But I feel like with age, my work has gotten more meaningful. I see the world differently. My photography is a reflection of me as a person. So I want to kick this back to you. Have you noticed the same in regards to work that you look at and that you're like, you know what? Yes, forget what the likes and the comments and anything else says. I really feel this work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I mean, at first, right now it's hard because everybody's saying everything about everybody's work, right? People could tell you your stuff is good. People could tell you your stuff is trash. You can try out for festivals and get denied. All that kind of stuff is just like soul crushing to a lot of people right now. But I mean, in myself included, like, I mean, I've been trying to do a lot of different stuff, and you get the no's, you get the no's, you get the no's, and sometimes you get the yes, and it feels great. But like, when you really go back to what you're doing it for, and thinking back to the masters or the guys that came before us, men and women that were shooting before us, they didn't have these echo chambers telling everybody what's good and what's wrong. They were just in it for themselves. And it's almost it's a luxury right now to have time to sit with yourself, to really process what you're thinking and see what you're doing. Like, there's this, we were talking at a festival in Essaouira, in Morocco. And one of the things that came up is like, we got to stop trying to take pictures of what we've seen and take pictures of what we see. You know what I mean? Like, really, really, like, move past what the masters did before, and like really just get into what's in front of you and why you're there taking it. And a lot can be revealed through that. Yeah.
I love your perspective, man. I mean, like I said, I tried not to dive too deep in. I wanted this to be me getting to know you. But one of the things that you did say, again, right before we went live, was cameras were designed to show us ourselves. And I want you to talk about that statement.
Yeah, man. I mean, this goes back to that 2020 comment. Like, I was, the world was going to end, right? We were all sitting there like, what's going to happen? We're sitting in our house for like months on end, reading all these books. And then I just looked at the pictures that a lot of the greats took. I do a lot of my stuff with natural light and natural settings of people just being there. Even when it's like a pose thing, a street portrait or whatever, I try to catch them really nice and light. But what I saw as a parallel between both of those photographies, and I looked at some of my friends who do like motorsports photography. So I got a ton of guys that kill it in the motorsports world, music or like, you know, entertainment photographers and all that. And I realized that no matter what they're taking pictures of, even my friends that do like birding or like, you know, what is the other thing, like landscape photography, like we're literally just doing what we do to show other people our time, our life. And that is the only thing that these cameras were made to do, is actually the machine itself was created to show us to ourselves. That's beautiful to me when you think about it like that. It doesn't, you know, it's maybe I'm getting a little bit too romantic with a lot of all this stuff, but to me that's exciting because it puts a little bit more responsibility on who we are and what we're trying to say with our work. You know, we have the ability to do these things because we do live in the future. I mean, let's be honest, we live in the future right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy the stuff that we wanted to do back in the day. And, you know, I'm looking at my work and then I look at like Bresson's work or something like that. And I'm like, technically speaking, there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing that's surpassing what he's done, technically. But the reason that he was shooting, the reason that I'm shooting were very different. And that's, you got to respect that whole thing. You know, I'm doing it because he did it. You know what I mean? He was mowing the lawn and I was following behind. It's kind of that way with every great. But to understand that like we have these technologies to do these different things, it actually puts a little bit more pressure on us to do something with it, do something good with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, these cameras can do amazing things, but I'm sick of seeing the same pictures. You know, 10 people can have this new camera, they all shoot. And if they're all shooting the same thing, like Instagram really does look like everybody's work looks like everybody's work. And except for, you know, the people that are really doing that stuff. And those are the people who are hardly on Instagram. You know what I mean? So, you know, the camera is an amazing device. And I think that it's when it's used right, you can really change lives. I mean, it's already done it. I mean, how crazy would it be, right? If like photography and cameras changed the world again. That's, you know, that's right in line for what we can do.
Ah, totally. I mean, it's people like you that are changing the world. And again, I had said it to you earlier, you might not always see your impact. It might not always be in front of you. And I feel like we've kind of become accustomed to instant validation or a tangible validation where we can see the validation. But you never know when the guy that's going to interview you in a couple of days is on your website and he was super down and out about photography and bored with his work. And next thing you know, he's spinning his chair around to talk to his coworker. And it's like, man, this guy's work is awesome. Like, it makes me want to go pick a camera up right now and go start photographing people again. And that's the impact that your work had on me personally. And I think that's just a testament to everything you're talking about now, from people being interesting and interestingly unique to a simple tool that was designed to show us to ourselves that now has the power to change people, change perspectives, change the way entire generations see everything. I mean, everything that's in front of us, what is it? It's a visual, you know, again, we might be getting into the weeds and into the minutia of things, but everything we see, we're visual people.
Yeah,
We're a culture that's based on video, audio, you know, whether it's moving or still frames. A lot of what we do has to appeal to that. So we are the true artisans. We are the craftspeople of life. I mean, as photographers, that's what we are. So I think it's incredibly inspiring to hear your perspective, where you're self-taught, right? You're inspired by what you saw, by those stories that you inquired about in those images. Now you're out here telling your own stories through not just stills, but through film. And you mentioned the camera, so I gotta go there. I know you travel with an M6, M11, SL2. Take us into your bag. What do you use when? What has brought you to the Leica system? You know, I think it's super interesting because a lot of Leica photographers share similar characteristics, where it's just an incredibly inspiring bunch. There's a lot of very deep storytelling there and interest in people. So take me into the camera bag. talk about your gear and each purpose that your different cameras have.
Yeah. So where to start? I've had a lot of cameras in my life. What I have right now, that's kind of in circulation. I have an M3 from 1955, and it's so clean. Like that camera is awesome. I don't even really use it. It's like it just kind of sits there and I look at it and I like nod.
Show
You know, the M6 is probably my favorite camera. I love shooting that camera. I don't really, it's one of these intangible things. You know, people always talk about the feel of a Leica and all this kind of thing. That camera, when I shoot, it's awesome, dude. Like the process of shooting film, but shooting a rangefinder, really thinking about what you're going to do before, understanding how you're going to do it. I actually led a workshop for Leica and Sammy's in Los Angeles back in 2019, and it was about composition. And I wasn't talking just about the composition of the frame. It was more about understanding from the get-go, like what camera you're picking up today, what lens you're going to have on it, what film is going to be in it, like your ISO, like what are you going to do before you even step out, and then going from there, like actually putting more responsibility on the photographer and knowing like, look, okay, all of these things are going to have an effect. This type of lens is going to give you this type of frame. This kind of film or this kind of ISO in a digital thing is going to give you this kind of sensitivity. Like the speed of the lens is going to give you your depth of field. Like understanding all of those and then building an idea after understanding that is so fun to me. And I think I might have gotten that from cinematography. I'm just kind of thinking about ideas before you actually get to shoot something. Whereas with photography, you kind of go out and you just shoot, and you can pull something back. But you have to really think about what you're doing to change words on a page of a script into visuals that make sense. So pre-visualization is probably the most important thing. And for that reason, the M6 has become my favorite camera, because when I think about it and I shoot and then I get the pictures back, I'm like, wow, that worked. You know what I mean? Like that's awesome. The M11 is probably right up there with the M6 because it's basically a digital M6. The colors are silly fresh. I mean, it's just an amazing camera. It's an amazing camera. Yeah, the M11 is incredible. That's what I can say right now. And the SL2, I use that for like action stuff, like when it's a little bit more fast paced. And also I use it for video. I shot a documentary in Ghana for the Motorcycle Arts Foundation about a kid out there who created a solar powered scooter with nothing. And so I went out there and shot that. It was pretty amazing to use that camera in that setting, and the performance was incredible. You know, so that's kind of what I try. Oh, and the other one that I always keep this camera with me just because is and I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh my God, this guy is talking about all these cameras, but the Hasselblad X-Pan 2. I mean, yeah, you make those pictures work and you just made, that is poetry, really. If you can get a good frame with one of those, then yeah, you're kind of killing the game right there.
And I will say, since you mentioned the SL, I know Leica has some deals going on right now, some promotions with the SL system. So for any Leica photographers out there, or anybody who's looking to get into the Leica system, you can definitely check out the if you look up the promotions that they have going on there too. I did have my hands on the SL2 for a little bit, and it's, you know, there's something to be said for just the experience. You said it before, you can't really, it's like this intangible feel where you really feel connected to the image, to what you're creating. I think, you know, when we talk about gear, it's from a perspective of, yeah, we know we can do essentially anything with anything, but it's about having something that makes you passionate to go out and use it. It's something that you want. It's like a good companion in life. You want that person that's, hey, if I stop to take pictures, don't get mad at me. We're going to the store, but I'm bringing my camera. And you want that camera that's like, goes anywhere with you. You never know when a story's going to pop up, especially people like you and I can tell you're the same type of person. You're standing in line to buy a bag of chips and something catches your eye or something. And it's like, all right, I don't just want to go over there and get a picture. I don't want to hip shoot, because, you know, now we know how intentional you are with your photography from the last question. I can see you as the type to go over there. What's up? I love your look. I love your style. You just got like a certain energy about you, and like you want to know more about people.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's better that way, honestly. And it's awesome because when you walk up to people or if you know, not every time, like there's a lot of pictures that I've taken that nobody even knows happened. And that's one of the cool things about street photography is like you can take pictures of moments that without that image, nobody would have ever imagined that that even happened. That's what's really cool about street photography. But you can also like engage. And like I was on the tram today and I was sitting there and I was looking at the, you know, just the scene. And everybody rides the train here and the tram and the bus here in Luxembourg. And there was this girl sitting in front of me and the lights coming through the window. There's all this activity behind her. And I just say, you know, excuse me, hi, I'm sorry, do you speak English? You know, tu parles anglais, like trying to get into that. And I just introduced myself, told her that I was a photographer and that I was looking at this scene, and I asked her if she wanted to help me make an image. And I described it to her a little bit. She agreed. We took a picture, and I mean, I showed it to her. I, you know, shot it from my camera. I was on the M11, shot it from my camera to my phone, passed it on to her right after that. And you know, she was amazed. She's like, "Wow, this is like, you know, this is really interesting because you're like making memories." And I was like, "Yeah, and this is a memory of today." You know, like you met me, we talked, you have this image, this is you riding the train or riding the tram. And you know, just like that, because it's not just about like me or about us. It's like how many times do regular people get to see themselves through the eyes of an artist just in every day? You know what I mean? Like that's something of a gift that you can, you know, offer up because it means nothing. Like there's no skin off my back to take the picture or to give the picture. In taking it, I'm studying, I'm trying to figure out, you know, what this camera can do, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's a two-person game. And then, you know, she's going home telling people about it. She has this picture and, you know, that's more of a gift. I mean, actually more worth it to me than anything.
I love that perspective. Now we're gonna get into some images in a couple moments here and
Yeah.
have you talk about some of your work, but I want to talk about stills versus filmmaking. It sounded like you were into filmmaking very early on in your life, not just in your career, but it sounds like video kind of grabbed you at an early age and you were like interested in it. For a lot of people, it's look, we start with one frame. Some of us can't even get that right.
Yeah.
But then you move into, you know, 24 frames a second and you get into that film world and it kind of like just opens up this whole new world of creating and storytelling. So you seem to be one of the outliers that had an interest in film early on. Is that true? Did I misinterpret something there? Or how, when did your
No.
love for filmmaking come across? And from a professional perspective, where are you at now?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually got into, well, if you want to go to the very beginning, there's a video circulating somewhere of me standing on a stool in like a suit, and I'm like on the camera at church, like because I was part of the like audio visual team. Like I want to see that. But that was a long time ago because I was always so pumped up about making images, you know, and that was, you know, one thing. I had a high school sweetheart. I made a video of her, like a VHS video, like I mean, just all that kind of stuff. Um, but I went into racing like pretty hardcore. And with that being like my path, I had a camera around, but I was never really shooting. I was always just kind of shooting for myself. And when I got to kind of the ceiling in my motorsports career, I wanted to make sure that I tried to do something else that I loved in life, to have a little bit more variety, but also to keep growing. You know, like if you feel like you're stagnating, like that's when you can, like that's when you start to die, really. And so I wanted to just try something again, like really dig into something while I had the opportunity to. So I jumped ship, went into the film world in like 2014, I think it was, and started as a PA. And, you know, I mean, it's weird traveling internationally and like doing all this kind of stuff with motorsport icons, then going to like being a runner and grabbing coffee for people that you don't even know who they are and they don't know who you are. It's a humbling scenario, but I mean, it's the road to understanding that animal. So, you know, work my way through the film sets and working on various movies, music videos, commercials, TV shows. And then now to the point of shooting and directing some of my own stuff. You know, I've done a few short films. I've done 3 features, documentaries, and, you know, now I'm the director of educational media at the Motorcycle Arts Foundation, and just really talking about how we use images to tell the stories that need to impact us, because we're getting into an age where images are, I mean, the currency of attention is the most important currency on the planet right now, is how much attention people put onto whatever. And if they're getting images that aren't telling the right stories, or stuff, not even not telling the right stories, but if there's not enough good messaging about who we are as people, about what we do in life, then, you know, I don't know where we end up, especially when, you know, we have AI and all this kind of thing popping up, and everything's getting so automated that we, you know, it's, if unchecked, we can really lose our human coil to what makes this life worth living. And I think that that's why artisans of photography, music, cuisine, design, or clothing design, like, the worth in those different areas is going to skyrocket, because people want to know something that's real and something that's tangible. And, you know, that's who we are. And that's, you know, if, again, that goes back to my philosophy on the responsibility in our arts. But it's, I mean, I think that that's what's important right now, is making sure we're telling the right stories and being the right people for it, you know?
I love that. Again, with all these different perspectives, it's like, I gotta ask. I know we're pulling the images up. We'll take a look in the
Yeah.
second, but you kind of touched on something there where it's like, you have such wise words, such a great outlook, such a great perspective. And again, we keep talking about this word perspective, and how we are the own captains of our fate, of our destiny, where we control the outcome based on how we handle something. How do you relate that in terms of motivation? When Greg Hatton hits a creative block, or seems to have difficulty being inspired to create, how do you pull yourself out?
I think the best thing is, like, you know, you got to have the right type of people around you. You have to have the right type of, you have to know who you are, number one, know what keeps you happy. Because if you know what keeps you happy, you'll smile all day long, I guess. You can turn on a piece of music that you love. You can talk to a friend about whatever. But, you know, and a lot of this takes humility too, and understanding that you're not going to have the answers all the time, and let yourself breathe for a minute, because it'll come back. It'll be there. But you have to give yourself a chance to actually go through it, and then see what else is around you. I mean, it's like in a conversation, right? If you're the only one talking, if it's talk, you'll gas out and the other person doesn't care. But if it's a back and forth, you give yourself a chance to breathe and understand what the other person's saying, then you can engage with the whole situation a bit better. And I think that works with photography. Again, you know, I think that that's when you can take a picture that doesn't look posed, or you can take a picture, you can wait to click, like this image right here. This is Brooke. She's the main character in the last feature film that I shot. We were setting up this frame, and before I took the camera, I was like, I had my M6 on me, and I'm just like, wait a second, just look at me in the, you know, let's just look straight into the camera. And I just sat there for, I don't know how long it took to take this picture. Not super long, but I just waited until her face was just like there, like she was there, you know? And that's what this picture came from. You know, it's just like being able to just pause for a second and observe what's around you, and then grabbing it when you can.
I love it. So we're gonna go through. We kind of already got it started here. So just talk us through these images.
Yeah, this picture is me playing with T-Max 3200. I was in Hawaii, doing a photo walk with some of the guys, and this was a shower, and I saw the kids running to it. And I've been on this vertical kick lately, but I was just like, oh, cool. Let me see if I couldn't like get them, just their heads coming over the wall. Maybe we'll see what happens. And this kid climbed up there, and I was like, click. And, you know, that came out of it when it was processed and I saw it, and I was like, dude, that picture is awesome. Like, I love this picture, you know, but that's just one of those things. These boys don't know that this picture even exists. I don't even know who they are. And that's that street photography thing, right? You don't even know all the pieces that are in it, but you captured a moment of life. And I thought that that was, that's just a testament to what street photography can be. And it's just, I mean, that's pure life right there. That's life, and more life.
I think that's so cool too, that aspect that you talked about of them not even knowing and you having no idea. It's always cool when we run across a story of like, hey, somebody came across this image and I had no idea that this picture was ever taken. It's like I've had circumstances like that happen. It's like it's so cool that like some random person ended up seeing your image and was like, "Oh my god, I know the person in there." And then but it's so cool even when it doesn't happen because
Yeah.
it's the purity of the moment and not everything needs to have the entire story told. There's some intrigue and interest in the mystery of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also when you go back to it, like you were talking about before, like when you go back through your work as you get older, like you can remember, or you do remember so much about where you were and what you were doing. And I mean, that's magical in and of itself.
Yeah. Like a single image can trigger like for example, this image. I mean, I'm sure it takes you right back to the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I love this picture. I shot it on the M10R and I was in Hawaii. This is China Walls. And it was interesting because these two kids came out together and they were hanging out and they saw me with the camera. I'm like the only dude that's like had shorts on and a t-shirt, but a camera. Like everybody else is jumping into the water, they're all wet. And but they were hanging out and they were asking me about what I was doing. And I told them that I was a photographer, but I lived on the island. So I was just kind of hanging out and checking everybody out. And they were visiting from school. And this was during 2020, during like, or this was 2021 actually. There was, all the craziness and race relations was just going all over the world. And it was interesting to see this black and white kid that were friends, same age, and they were just there together. And I'm like, look at how, like, forget what the news is saying. Like, look at this. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is life. These two dudes are hanging out together. And I asked them if I could have a portrait, and they thought that they wanted just like, one of the guys. I was like, nah, you guys together. And they got up next to each other and they were touching. And I was like, damn, okay, perfect. You know what I mean? So that was the image. And I was like, this is why, these are the stories that I talk about telling. It's like, forget about, a person's skin color and all this. Like, do you vibe with them? Like, do you even know about them? You know what I mean? What can you share or learn? Like, there's so much. And there's intangibles. And this picture really talks about that. And I like to tell that story whenever I show this picture or whenever it's seen, because a lot of times people are, they just need to see life from a different perspective or hear a different story about what these relations can be. Because I'm saying if anything crazy happened to either one of these two people, the other would be affected.
Mm.
You know what I mean? If anything happened to those two people or any one of those two people, I would be affected. You know what I mean? Because it's like you can see the humanity. We're all just out here trying to have a good time and experience life while we have the chance to. So yeah, I can go on and on about that subject, bro.
I, no, I love it. And that's something that totally resonates with me as well, because I feel like we all got, especially street photographers, we're I guess victims. I guess I'll use the word victims of whatever is out there, the ills of society and the ills of that can be put out there in the media. And these, you know, I tell people all the time, it's like, man, when I go out in the streets and I talk to people, the same conversations that you see on social media and on the news,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not coming up and it's like I'm not walking up. I'm not walking up to, I can walk up to a group of black guys in New York City, and it's not a white guy with a camera walking up to a group of black guys. It's a dude with a camera walking up to people that are hanging out. And that's what it's about. And it's really that interaction there. And I feel like we've shined such more of a light, which again, I think there's good sides of this whole conversation that you can dive in and in terms of different perspectives being shown from different perspectives. But again, like sometimes it's just about the purity of the image, the interaction. It's two people that are interacting. And why can't we focus on this rather than always going over to
Yeah.
have to have some kind of negative connotation or have to shine a particular light on something? I look at this image and it's just like, again, I don't focus on the color. You see the
Mhm.
color, but you don't focus on the color. And I think, but then again, providing that context of what generation, because we're not far removed from when this image was taken. 30
No.
years from now, the context plays a bigger part when you start looking at what was happening to the country as a whole, what was happening when you're not just looking at a single year, but you're looking at in a decade or an entire generation, where that's where the power of photography really cements itself, because this is an image that's going to not just tell a story about one happening, you coming across them. It's an image that can really shape a dynamic as a whole. And I think that's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that's what images do, bro. That's what images do. I mean, this is like, there's a lot of people that chase trauma, with their camera, and that's a thing. But if that's what somebody's good at and all this kind of thing, going into those war zones and all that, I give them so much props. It's incredible. My thing is that there just has to be balance to the game. It can't just be all that without this, because then everybody's only going to be expecting to see what's bad and what's wrong with the world. When you go outside and you might see this, like this could have been, I'm saying, like there's a lot of people that went to the different protests and that was great. But at the same time, there was probably people that weren't able to make it, that were out with their friends doing other things. You know what I mean? And that's the reality of what we really need to look at in life. There's a lot more um, outside of our bubbles. So we just need to really embrace that.
Totally. You have such a great perspective, man. How it's like it's so thought out and well-rounded. Whereas I think some people, it's like they just open their mouth and then they deal with the repercussions. Where it's like you have thoughts formulated, and it's like, okay, I'm looking at the entire picture before I can talk about one side of the coin. And then when I talk about one side of the coin, it's in respect to the entire view, if that makes any sense.
I mean, I appreciate that, bro. I mean, I'm learning just like you are, honestly. Like there's been a lot of life that has happened in my life that, could have taken me down. And, I didn't come up with a lot of resources to do a lot of the things that I do. So I had to work my way to where I'm at. And that's taught me a lot. It's been a very humiliating, humbling journey. But I mean, even this picture here, this is an assignment that I was doing in Hawaii. The project is called Can You See Me Now? And it's about the homelessness issue that is on Hawaii, or on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, but it's also about, the homelessness situation everywhere. It's like a lot of times we look past the humanity of people that are on the street and all this. And, might be out there with this $15,000 camera, but I can still see that there are people that have less and need attention too, because at the end of the day, we can find ways to help people. We can do so much, dude. We live in the future. We live in the future. We have supercomputers in our pockets. Like, let's not even joke. Like we can do amazing things, but a lot of times we don't see it. And I think that through life, being an African-American man who's come up and really wanted to do a lot and didn't have a lot of access to do a lot, I really had to force my way up into a lot of positions. I really see how a little bit of assistance could have helped, but I also see how, communication also is something that can, change the dynamic of the situation. That being able to talk to people about what you're doing and who you are can reshape a whole narrative. You know what I mean? So that goes back to storytelling. And, this picture, I sat with this guy. This is Uncle Kavika. I sat with him, bought him. We sat while we ate lunch together, and he told me some wild stories. But I was just like looking at the condition of him, and he's been on the street, dude, like for so long. I can't even imagine what that's like. Like, I mean, the average length of time from the people, it was a 2.5-month project. The average length of time of people has spent on the street was like 10 years. And I'm like, that concept to me, I was like, 10 years. Here I am going in here thinking I'm going to take some pictures. I'm going to help. But then getting into it and realizing, oh, this is a lot bigger than me. This is a whole lot, like I can be part of something, but this is a whole different conversation, because a person that's been out there for 10 years, who's malnourished, who's, doesn't even know what our lives look like with these webcasts and crazy phones and electric cars. Like that doesn't really make sense. So really, it brought me a little bit closer to what, these people might be experiencing, and what I'm actually able to do to help the situation. And hopefully that project spurred a little bit of conversation in that direction.
Mm.
Yeah, I love this picture. New York, Staten Island Ferry.
I thought it was.
Yeah, man. This kid was like, he's from France, and it was his first time in New York. So he was just in awe, going back and forth over the ferry. And he was there. I asked to take a picture. I took one picture before this that he was unaware of. He was just in the crowd, and his head was above the crowd, and it was just like a real statuesque. It looked really cool. I shared it with him, but I was like, can I get like kind of a portrait of you over here? He's like, sure. So we went over there, and he sat there, and he hadn't really gotten set yet. But I was just looking at the frame, checking out my settings, and these two hands came in, and the Statue of Liberty is off to the left. And they're taking pictures of the Statue of Liberty with the hands. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. He's taking it in with his eyes and with his mind and his imagination. And, they're taking it in with the pictures on the phone. And I was like, that's a cool story. So I snapped that picture, and I like this one a lot.
I was interested to see what you thought about it, because when I came across it, there was something that just jumped out in his expression. And it's like, it's the unknown. Again, we talk about these elements, and sometimes just having that gaze, what are they looking at? It makes you wonder. And I think that's one of the cool things about certain images as well. When they make you think, you don't want somebody to think, what is this about? What am I looking at here? That's
Yeah.
not a good thing. But when you look at an image and you're like, first, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Pictures on the Staten Island ferry, it's like, you always know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have been shocked if you said it wasn't. But the expression, obviously beautiful lighting. I love the touch with the hands in there on the phones. And it's like, it's almost just like that noise is behind him. Sometimes you
Yeah.
read too deep into images, but I looked at this image and I paused on it for a couple moments. And it's like, man, how many times have I been lost in thought on the Staten Island ferry? Well, I don't like going to Staten Island, so not too many. But every time I do take that ferry over there, it's like you just kind of get lost in thought. And as the ferry is pulling away from, lower Manhattan, you look back and you're just like, it's one of those moments where you're like, man, I love living here. I love being here. Like, it's such a cool place and time, and like, I'm glad I'm here. So that's what
Yeah.
I saw. So it's kind of cool to hear your thoughts on the image. And I know it's always cool as a photographer to hear what people think when they see your images. Now, this one right here is just, it's awesome. I love
Mind
the
blowing, bro. Mind blowing. This
way
is
you
that.
compose images is, it's amazing.
No, dude, it's crazy because I think that again, a lot of the composition ideas come from cinematography. But this image actually was taken when I was shooting that documentary in Ghana. And I was just in awe of everything because it was my first time being in Ghana, in Africa. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the first time as a African American man I was on the African continent, and my mind was blown up. Like I took my shoes off so that I could walk barefoot on that continent. And everything that I saw for the week that I was there was just like, it was unreal. You know what I mean? I've never been surrounded, but like, I mean, I was literally around millions of Black people. Like that's never happened in my life before. And there's a lot of surreal things going on that I kind of keep close to me, but I also like to share because there's effects of those exposures that last on us. And I try to share that with people because I encourage everybody to travel and to see different things that are out there, because it really opens up your eyes. I mean, the fact that this woman is walking down this corridor, which I had just walked down, and I don't know how heavy I don't even know what's on her head. I don't know what it is. Couldn't tell you. I don't know how she's doing it. I'm 6'1", 190 pounds. Like, I'm not weak, but I couldn't do that at all. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, what is going on? And then, the light, there's a tree that I'm underneath, and that's why the foreground wall is shaded, but the sun was setting and hit that wall that she's in front of. And it was just magic, dude. And to be honest, the way that the camera caught it, I was like, okay, I
Come
like,
on, own it, own it. He's like, my
yeah,
camera takes great pictures. No, that's it's all the work that goes into it,
yeah.
and
No, it's true.
you know.
Yeah, it's true.
Now I know we're running short on time, but we have a couple more images here, so we're gonna extend if you don't mind. We're gonna extend if we have to, just because I love hearing your thoughts on each image.
Bro, we could talk all night
Oh,
long.
let's
When we,
go.
when we catch up in New York and we're shooting out in the street, we'll talk even longer. Like, I mean, that's living, honestly. This picture is amazing. Um, she's lit only by that light coming through the window. This is on the Staten Island Ferry. I was out in New York for a month and going back and forth. I was staying on Staten Island, but I would go back and forth to Manhattan on the ferry pretty much every day. And I would take pictures on the ferry. And I saw this girl there. She's German. She was visiting. I shared this picture with her through Instagram. And since she's gotten these pictures, she's bought herself a camera and she's starting to take up photography because she really likes the picture and she really wants to get into the art more. And it came from this image. We just sat and talked. I think she posted it to her Instagram page. But this was, again, M11 and just like reading the light that was there. And, I usually just say, kind of just be, don't let me tell you what to do. Just like, let me see what happens and trying to find a moment that made sense. And that was it. And yeah, I love this picture. I love it.
I echo that sentiment. That's why we had it as the lead image for this.
Oh, Marrakesh. So this actually was from 2 weeks ago. I was in Marrakesh, part of a think tank, the Alif Digital Project. It's a very interesting think tank where we're talking about education in the digital age, especially with all the AI and all the technologies that exist. And they brought together thought makers of basically every genre of design. They're just thinking about how education needs to be in this new age. And they were doing it in Marrakesh because they want a school or a system of education to exist on the African continent. And I was invited to be a part of that. I was more than honored. I mean, it was, Safir Balali is the one who's heading it up. And I got the invitation. So going to Marrakesh, going to Morocco, lifelong dream. To be able to do that was amazing. So I found myself after hours just kind of walking around and doing street photography stuff. But it's one of those moments, like this picture is like, I never thought when I was a kid, thinking back to myself, like if I could go back in time and tell my 18-year-old self, like, this is, what's going to happen, you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't even register. But I'm extremely honored to be able to have gone there and be a part of that conversation with people that I never thought I'd be in a conversation with, like the people from Art Center and like head of design at Citron and crazy. And I'm there talking about photography and my love of Leicas and what image making really is at the core. It was an amazing opportunity to speak about what we do as artists and to represent for photography. I think I held it down.
I'm sure you did.
Yes. Hawaii. This is a photo of some kids in Hawaii jumping on
walls.
This is at the walls. Yeah, man. And it's part of this interesting series that I did, where after the pandemic was like when everything was kind of locked down, there was nobody in Hawaii. Like there was only the locals, right? And nobody was traveling from overseas. Nobody was traveling from the mainland. Everything was locked down and you couldn't really go outside, only to just swim or exercise. But when those regulations started to lift, everybody came back outside. So I went out to the walls and it was amazing because it was the first time that I had seen Waikiki and like everybody out there was like locals, like no tourists, like all brown skinned kids or people that have come over and become Hawaiian, like it was an amazing thing to see, to be in that space and see the island like that. And what was really kind of like an interesting piece is that Waikiki it used to be for the Ali'i, and that's like the royal family type. And so like that stretch of land and that stretch of beach and the waters there was kind of like reserved for the royal family. And then it turned into a tourist destination. But after all that, all the tourists were away, it was kind of like taken over by the people that are from there. And it was awesome to see. So I just took a bunch of pictures of these kids jumping and kind of just sat back and made a little story about how they were having fun again after all the stuff is like coming back to life.
Love that. All right, I gotta end it here. I've been waiting to get to this picture. It just it grabs your attention, and I'm a car guy, and I know you spent a long time in this world and are still interdeveloped with it. Talk to us about this image.
That's my boy Bubba Wallace, number 23 in the 2311 racing team. That's Michael Jordan's racing team. Bubba Wallace is a friend of mine. I met him a long time ago when he was a kid, and he hit me up because he wanted me to shoot some photos for him last year and just run around with him and do that. So I was honored to go out and shoot. Met everybody on the team, and I stayed out there for like 5 or 6 races, and we just, you know, took pictures. This is with the SL2, 24-70 on it, and just really getting in close as he's loading up to go out and do some laps in Fontana. I think the most amazing thing is like these friendships that you can gain through photography can take you so many different places, because Bubba's a photographer too. You know, like outside of racing and all that, he's a dope photographer. He's a really good photographer. He has an Instagram page that's Bubba Wallace Photography. I converted him to Leica. He has an MP and a Q2 reporter. But he's a dope photographer, and he's a really good dude that's doing a lot of amazing things in the car. And really just, you know, it's another testament to humanity. Like, he's not just a race car driver. He's an awesome dude. He's a dog owner. He's a husband. He's, you know, it's just more of what life can be. And if we allow it to just be what it is, you know, and to look a little bit outside of the box, like, sure, people are like, oh, he's just a race car driver. He's, you know, da, 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 da. Yeah, well, I guess I'm just a photographer then. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? So yeah, I love this picture. There's a bunch of energy. The performance of the camera was exactly what I needed it to be, because the colors, the aspect, the focus. I mean, it's a dope picture. So yeah,
like you look at it, you're there, and it's funny. It's like you could just tell, like, he gives that vibe whenever you see him speak, or just whenever you see him, that he's the kind of person you look at and you're like, I bet he's cool in real life. Like, if you were to like bump into him, or, you know,
bro is hilarious. He is hilarious. Like, he's hilarious. That's what I'm saying. You know, the dude is, the stories that he tells, how he tells them, how serious he is about what he does. And you know, it's good natured. And, you know, it's one of those things where you think you may know what a person's like, but you never know until you get up and personal with him. And I knew him as a kid, and he was a lot younger. We both grew up and we're doing our own things, but we came back together, and, you know, the vibe is right. It's a good thing.
I love it. Well, Greg, I want to thank you, man. This has been awesome. I do have one last little surprise here that we're getting on the fly.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to blow your mind right now, because something hit me and it's been bothering me the entire time. And I'm like, wait, I'm like, dude, you're dropping the Hawaii stuff. And then I'm like, wait, no, I'm like, I know Greg from somewhere. I'm like, I know Greg from somewhere. Early pandemic, there was a whole bunch of us on, like, we were doing Zooms talking about street photography. We have a mutual friend, Ivy.
Oh no! That's amazing.
As if we couldn't have scripted a better end to this. I'm sitting here, and then when you're on the walls, and I'm like, Hawaii's not a big place. And then you mentioned the street photography collective over there, and I'm like, and it's like we come across so many people in our worlds, and it's like, I'm sure there's people that, like, I've talked to and had full conversations, and I've met them like 3 times before, and they're just like, this guy doesn't remember. And I'm just like, man, I'm all over the place. It hit me. And then I did get a message from Ivy during this, and I'm like, so now, knowing all this, let me just say that I've known of you very, very, very well. I just didn't know it, but I've heard such great things about you, about your work. Everything is validated now. It all checks out. The resume checks out. Everything that I have heard.
Oh man,
All,
dude.
now it's all now it's like, man, I'm gonna have to sit here. I'm gonna have to see, we're gonna end this and I'm gonna be sitting here for 5 minutes and process, like, dude, everything we've been talking about, like how cool people are, how cool the world is, how beautiful it is to be alive, has just kind of like come together right now. So look,
Ivy, I love you, Ivy. That's amazing. I totally understand what's happening. She spoke about you. This is incredible. That's real life, bro. But that's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly case in point.
This is it. We couldn't have analogized it, or we couldn't have given an example. We couldn't have explained it. But look, I think we got to end there, man. I think there's no way we can wrap up. But let us know, Greg. Obviously, drop the socials, drop the website. Where can we find more of your work? You're about to make me reactivate my Instagram just to get back on here and reconnect with you, man.
Oh man. So I mean, my website is impaci.com, IMPACI.com. I have that also for Instagram, Impaci, at Impaci, IMPACI. But my main Instagram is Renaissance Man, spelled out the way that it's supposed to. Awesome. Yeah, I got it first, but I also meant it, so it's good.
There you go. Greg, this is a pleasure, man. Danny's dropping the links there for all of you out there in the vast expanses of the internet, so you can click on those links there, check out more of Greg's work. But look, we provided you guys exactly what we came here to do, some inspiration. I'm checking out for the day now. I'm grabbing my camera and I'm going to find someone. I'm going to tell a story. So Greg, I want to thank you, man. This is awesome. A huge thank you to Leica for reintroducing us and making this whole thing happen. So a huge thank you to the Leica team for hosting these wonderful stories, events that we're doing, interviews with some of the best photographers in the industry. Huge thank you to them. Richard, of course, at Leica. Huge thank you to Richard, who's behind the scenes making it all happen. So Greg, I'm going to leave it to you. Any final words?
Thank you for the opportunity. To all my family at Leica. It's amazing to even be dealing with them. I never would have thought in a million years that they were the camera company that was going to hit me up. But they have, and I'm totally grateful for that. So thank you guys for this opportunity. Thank you guys at B&H. Thank you, Derek. It's gratitude, because again, we live in the future and we get to do these cool things, and to be a part of that is that's life, so more life.
Hey, to life. Everybody else out there, go out there, live your life, talk to somebody, talk to everybody, make the memories and enjoy life. So that is it. Another rendition of the B&H virtual events phase is in the books. We'll catch y'all next time.